The first call came at 3:47 in the morning. A frantic whisper cutting through the noise of a college town bar district. Boston police dispatcher hearing the words once, then static, then only breathing. "You won't let me leave. Room 412. Please." The line went dead. By dawn, cruisers were converging on the Copley Hotel, a boutique establishment near Copley Square, their lights painting the brick facades and gold-trimmed windows in urgent blue. Inside, housekeeping had discovered what the caller had been too terrified to fully articulate. 22-year-old Sofia Reyes, a promising architecture student from San Juan, Puerto Rico, lay motionless on the bathroom floor of a penthouse suite. No signs of struggle visible from the doorway. No obvious wounds marking her skin. But the hotel's security system, a network of cameras monitoring every hallway and elevator, would tell a story far more sinister than any simple accident could explain. The footage captured everything. Sophia's face when she arrived, flushed and nervous. The man beside her, distinguished, graying at the temples, his hand possessive on her lower back. And later, much later, the chaos of their final hours together preserved in grainy digital evidence that would haunt investigators for months. Her friends at Boston University remembered Sophia as disciplined, relentlessly driven, someone who spoke fluently in the language of blueprints and architectural theory. The daughter of a single nurse working double shifts in San Juan who had sacrificed everything so her child could study on the mainland, away from the limited opportunities of the island. Sophia had earned her spot at BU through pure determination, through late nights in libraries and portfolios that showed a brilliance rarely seen in someone so young. But Boston was colder than she had imagined during those video calls home. Not just the winters, though February could be brutal, the wind cutting through Commonwealth Avenue like a blade. The cold ran deeper. It lived in the price of everything. Tuition, rent near campus, the cost of a coffee where classmates studied, the isolation that came with being one of the few Latinx faces in certain circles, the only Spanish speaker in most of her design seminars, the girl who showed up in last season's clothes while everyone else rotated through designer labels. Her roommate, Carmen, would later recall how Sophia's phone bills consumed her monthly paycheck from the university bookstore. Rent swallowed the rest before she could even think about groceries. By September of her junior year, Sophia was rationing meals, skipping campus social events, because she couldn't afford the cover charges at bars where her classmates gathered. She'd scroll late into the night, laptop light the only companion in the darkness of their small dorm room, until she stumbled onto a forum where women spoke in coded language about quick money. Easy money, the kind that came with discretion and confidentiality agreements. The kind that could solve everything if you were brave enough or desperate enough to consider it. Her first message on a premium dating platform came from someone who identified himself as Marcus Wellington, 48 years old, a venture capitalist with offices overlooking Boston Harbor. His profile photograph was pristine. Divorced, though the split was amicable. 2 adult children attending Ivy League institutions. A collector of contemporary art and what he called authentic human experiences. He moved through life with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, and his initial messages were all poetry wrapped in promise. Soft words about helping talented young women find their footing in a difficult city. About the loneliness that wealth couldn't cure. The emptiness of success when no one understood you. About seeing something special in her, something that deserved to flourish. Sophia told herself she was just curious, just browsing, just seeing what conversations existed in this hidden world. But curiosity evolved into correspondence. Correspondence into meetings that she scheduled with her heart pounding, and meetings into a carefully orchestrated dinner at a restaurant so exclusive that Sophia had never even heard of it, so exclusive that the name itself was whispered rather than advertised. Orsini's, tucked into a brownstone on Beacon Hill, with wine lists that cost more than her monthly rent and dishes that came without prices on the women's menus. Marcus paid attention in a way that felt intoxicating after years of invisibility. He asked about her architectural designs with genuine curiosity, about the thesis project she was developing, about her fears regarding the job market after graduation. He asked about her mother, about what it meant to be the first in her family to attend a university in America, about the weight of those expectations. He made her feel seen, truly seen, and in a city where she often felt transparent, where professors looked through her and classmates looked past her, that sensation was enough to obliterate her remaining caution. By the third meeting, he had given her a credit card. "Just for emergencies," he said, his hand warm on her shoulder. "Just so you never have to worry about the small things. Just so I know you're taken care of." Sophia told Carmen it was an internship stipend from a design firm he knew. The truth sat heavier on her tongue with each passing week, growing more difficult to carry alone. Marcus's generosity escalated in increments so small that Sophia barely noticed the shift from gifts to expectations. A weekend trip to the Berkshires where he had a cottage turned into a week where he began to ask why she needed to attend her Monday seminar when she could stay with him. Dinner invitations became demands delivered through text at 11 p.m., sometimes midnight. When she didn't respond immediately, the texts multiplied. "Where are you? Who are you with? Why is your phone off?" He wanted to know her schedule in detail, her class times, her work shifts, why she needed friends when she had him. The first time Sophia mentioned ending things, suggesting gently that perhaps this was moving too fast, his response was instantaneous and chilling. A photograph appeared on her phone. Her mother's house in San Juan. A Google Maps screenshot marked with their home address. A message in all capitals. "Do you really want me to reach out to your family and tell them exactly what their daughter has been doing to survive?" The message dissolved her resistance like acid dissolves metal. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at that image of the only home she'd ever known, now transformed into a weapon. She called him back immediately. She apologized. She promised she didn't mean what she'd said. She said she loved him. She said whatever he wanted, she would do. Carmen noticed Sophia's transformation first, the subtle shifts that accumulated into something unrecognizable. She'd emerged from the bathroom after video calls with her face blotchy, her eyes swollen. She stopped attending her Thursday seminar, then her Tuesday one. She began lying about where she was going, inventing study groups and library sessions that never happened. Her grades, once pristine, began to slip. She failed a major exam, something that would have devastated her before, but now barely seemed to register. When Carmen found texts on Sophia's laptop one afternoon, pages and pages of them, all variations on the same theme, she felt her stomach drop. Control masked as affection. Possession presented as protection. Escalating threats delivered in the syntax of love. Messages like "you're nothing without me." Statements like "no one else will ever want you after what you've done." Pictures of her house. Emails forwarded from her mother's account, proving he could access her communications. Carmen begged Sophia to go to campus security, to the police, to anyone who might intervene. But Sophia couldn't move past the terror of exposure. Her visa status wasn't guaranteed, her father's old case of immigration violations still lingering in family history. Her mother didn't know. Her family would be destroyed if they learned the truth. The shame felt bigger than the fear, and Marcus had told her repeatedly that this was normal, that all relationships required surrender, that love was about trust, and trust meant never, ever leaving. On a brutal night in January when the temperature dropped below zero and the city locked itself against the cold, Sophia agreed to meet Marcus at the Copley Hotel. She had planned this for 3 days, composing and recomposing her exit speech in fragments during lecture halls and work shifts. She had even drafted the text message, read it aloud in the darkness of her dorm room, where Carmen pretended to sleep so as not to startle her. "I deserve better than this. I'm leaving you. I'm telling everyone." Those words had felt powerful in the privacy of the night. But when Marcus picked her up in his black Range Rover, when she slid into leather seats that smelled like expensive cologne, his mood was already fractured. He'd received a notification on his phone. A boy from her architecture class, someone named David who was sweet and kind and had never asked her for anything, had liked one of her Instagram photographs. Just a simple heart icon on a photo she'd posted of her design sketches. That single gesture, That microscopic interaction became the catalyst for everything that followed. By the time they reached the hotel room, high enough that the city sprawled below them like something conquered, Marcus's voice had dropped to something darker than she'd ever heard from him. A voice that barely sounded human. He locked the door behind them. He told her she was ungrateful after everything he'd done, that her future was quite literally in his hands, that without him, she was nothing, that no one else would ever want her after what she'd done, after what she'd become. Sophia tried to leave. The security footage captured the moment. Her hand on the doorknob, panic flickering across her face. Marcus moving toward her with a speed that suggested this violence had been building for months. His hands finding her wrists, both of them falling. Sophia's body striking the marble countertop of the bathroom vanity with a sound that would echo through the investigation, a sound the detectives would hear again and again in audio reconstruction. There was a struggle, brief, desperate, ultimately one-sided. A lamp shattered, glass scattered across the floor. Sophia's head made contact with the edge of that counter once, then again. And then silence, broken only by Marcus's ragged breathing and the distant sound of traffic far below on the Boston streets. When police arrived at 5:33 a.m., Marcus was already gone. The room showed signs of hasty, panicked escape. A window left standing open despite the bitter cold. A rope of bedsheets tied hastily to the radiator and dangling from the fire escape, suggesting a desperate descent to an adjoining rooftop. But in his panic, Marcus had made one critical mistake. He left his phone on the nightstand, its screen still glowing. In its recent call history was a trail of breadcrumbs that would lead detectives across 3 states in pursuit of a man trying to disappear. An Uber receipt for Logan Airport at 4:22 a.m. A one-way ticket purchased at 4:47 a.m. to Mexico City. A credit card charge at a gas station in Providence, Rhode Island at 5:15 a.m. The manhunt that followed consumed the city like nothing had in years. Maria Reyes, Sophia's mother, arrived from San Juan within 24 hours, taking the first available flight. Arriving at Logan with only the clothes she was wearing and an expression of such absolute devastation that airport staff wept as they directed her to the police station. Her grief became a force that refused silence, that refused to allow her daughter's death to be filed away and forgotten. She stood outside police headquarters in the freezing cold with Sophia's photograph clutched in her hands. She gave interviews in Spanish and English, her voice breaking but never faltering. She posted Sophia's photograph everywhere. She demanded justice with a quiet, unbreakable intensity that transformed the case from a sad statistic into a rallying point for the entire immigrant community. The media machine engaged with its typical hunger. Articles about predatory relationships masked as romance. Lengthy segments about the specific vulnerability of international students, young women far from home, far from family, navigating a system designed to isolate them. Think pieces about the men who exploit dreams for entertainment and profit, about the ways that money can purchase not just bodies but silence, complicity, amnesia. Within 48 hours, federal agents were tracking Marcus across 3 states. He'd rented a car using a false name. He'd used a secondary credit card at a gas station in Connecticut. He'd attempted to cross the border at Nogales, Arizona, using a passport under an assumed identity. He'd purchased a ticket to Argentina under a third name. But his mistake was in underestimating how thoroughly the digital world records movement. Every transaction left a trace. Every camera captured his image. In Newark Airport, 3 days after Sophia's death, they found him sitting in an upscale restaurant in Terminal C, calmly eating pasta carbonara, drinking a glass of Burlo, as if the previous 72 hours had been someone else's nightmare entirely. He didn't resist when agents approached. He simply set down his fork and smiled, as if he'd been expecting them all along. The investigation unraveled his entire history with deliberate, meticulous precision. 3 other women, all international students, all with similar stories. Each one had reported him to campus police or the local authorities. Each incident had been settled quietly, cash exchanged for silence, legal paperwork signed without representation. Each woman was now living with the trauma and terror that he might someday contact them again, might publish the photographs he'd taken, might reach out to their families with threats and exposure. Each one still woke from nightmares years later. The digital evidence was overwhelming. Photographs that he'd taken without consent. Messages documenting his control and threats. Screenshots of his access to their email accounts, their social media, their financial information. The psychological disintegration documented in terrifying detail through text Sophia had sent to Carmen in the hours and days before her death. I don't know who I am anymore. I think he's taking that away from me. I look in a mirror and I see someone I don't recognize. The trial became a referendum not just on Marcus's crimes, but on what America promised to young women versus what it actually offered. Sophia's mother sat in the front row of the courthouse, hands folded, face carved from stone, rarely blinking. Attorneys presented the digital evidence with clinical precision. The photographs, the messages, the screen recordings of conversations where Marcus outlined his plans to control her, to isolate her, to make her dependent. The psychological disintegration documented in screenshots and voicemails. The security footage showing the exact moment of violence. The defense attempted the usual calculus of victim blaming. Mutual consent between adults. Misunderstandings about the nature of their relationship. The tragic accident of a passionate relationship that simply went too far. Claims that Sophia had been a willing participant in everything that happened, that she had understood the terms, that her death was a terrible but ultimately mutual consequence of choices she had made. But Sophia's voice, preserved in voicemails and screenshots, and through the testimony of Carmen and her professors and her mother, demolished every fiction that the defense attempted to construct. She had tried to leave 47 times. 47 times. That number was established through the phone records. 47 separate attempts to end the relationship, each one met with escalation, with threats, with emotional manipulation so sophisticated that she'd eventually stop trying. The jury needed exactly 3 hours to return guilty on all counts. Murder in the first degree, aggravated stalking over an extended period, felony coercion, illegal access to computer accounts. The conviction landed hard in Boston's consciousness. Universities across Massachusetts implemented new protocols for at-risk international students. Campus police were required to respond to reports of controlling behavior within hours. Advocacy groups coordinated legal support, immigration assistance, and emergency funding for students in crisis. A scholarship in Sophia's name became more than just a memorial. It became a symbol and a plea. That no one else be left so desperate that they'd consider trading their safety, their autonomy, their very sense of self for survival. Marcus received life without the possibility of parole, a sentence that felt simultaneously too much and devastatingly not enough to the people who had loved Sophia, who would spend the rest of their lives wondering what she might have created, what building she might have designed, what dream she might have pursued. He faded into the prison system, where his money meant nothing and his charm had no currency, where he would spend decades in a cell contemplating the consequences of his choices. But Sophia's legacy grew and expanded in ways that her death had made possible, a tragic alchemy that transformed her silence into action. Her mother established the Reyes Foundation, providing emergency housing, legal counsel, and counseling services to students in crisis. The foundation grew rapidly, funded by donations from the community, from universities, from women who saw in Sophia's story an echo of their own near misses and narrow escapes. Murals appeared on Boston streets and on the BU campus featuring Sophia's face, her eyes bright with the intelligence and hope that had characterized her. One mural depicted her incomplete architectural sketch, a building designed to be a refuge, a sanctuary for those without safe places to go. In that image, the structure was only partially drawn, its future never finished, a visual representation of everything she would never build. Years later, students still gathered near that mural. They pointed to it and whispered her story to new arrivals, to freshmen finding their way through the city for the first time. They told cautionary truths. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to accept this treatment. Your life is not for sale, no matter how much money someone offers, no matter how lonely you feel, no matter how desperate your circumstances become. And in those words, spoken by voices young and old, in multiple languages, Sophia's voice, silenced in that hotel room on a January night, continues to speak across the city. It carries a warning and a promise that her death might save someone else from the same trap, the same lies, the same brutal cost of dreams pursued in the wrong hands. That America's promise, though imperfect and often cruel, can be remade through collective action and memory. That a girl from San Juan, working in a university bookstore, designing buildings in her imagination, deserved better. And that everyone who comes after her deserves better too.